Multiple baseline designs apply to different behaviors of the same subject. Multiple baselines across behaviors. A response of any form evoked by an emote and followed by a specific reinforcer is AMAND. Written response evoked by a verbal SD is copying text. A verbal SD evokes a specific nonverbal behavior is listener discrimination. A response evoked by a nonverbal discriminative stimulus. Assumption that the world is lawful and orderly. Determinism. Vocal response evoked by a vocal verbal SD with formal similarity is echoic. The philosophy of the science of behaviorism. A variety of experimental designs that use baseline logic as a single case design. Improvements based on opportunity to perform is practice effect. Experimental design to compare two or more conditions is multi-element design. Multiple baseline design applied to different participants is multiple baselines across subjects. Two or more verbal SDs that each independently evoke behavior but when combined evoke a specific response. Compound verbal discrimination. Experimental technique that demonstrates the effects of reinforcement. DRA reversal technique. Covert events accessible only to the person or private events. Data points that do not consistently fall within a narrow range. Variable baseline. Defining behavior by shape or form is a topography-based definition. Members of a response class based on their common effect on the environment. Function-based definition. Behavior that produces covariation in other untrained behaviors is pivotal behavior. Target behaviors are appropriate and intervention procedures are acceptable as social validity. The truth of the statement depends on how effectively it guides action. That's pragmatism. A FA where conditions occurring during naturally occurring opportunities. Trial-based functional analysis. Belief of integration to the maximum amount is normalization. Verbal behavior with formal similarity under the control of verbal SD is duplicate. 1 or 2 short sessions are conducted for each condition. Brief functional analysis. A hypothetical variable that falsely claims to explain the observed phenomena is explanatory section. Behavior change by variables independent of other people and contingency. A discrimination in which the verbal stimulus alters the function of another stimulus. Verbal conditional discrimination. A single verbal response is the function of more than one variable. Convergent multiple control. Continually questioning truth and the validity of science, philosophical doubt. Experimental design with changing successor criterion for reinforcement or punishment. Changing criterion design. Experimental design where participants choose between options based on distinct cues and reinforcement. Concordance design. Variation of a multiple baseline with intermittent checks. Multiple probe design. A presumed but unobserved process. Hypothetical construct. A statement of the predicted outcome is a prediction. Systematic process for identifying the purpose of challenging behavior is a functional behavior assessment. A FA variation designed to increase efficiency. Interview informed synthesized contingency. Reversal design, experimental design that alternates conditions to verify previous effects as a reversal design. List of description of skills and the conditions under which they should be observed. Behavioral checklist. Synonymous with ABAB design, a withdrawal design. The subject's behavior is a result of exposure to a prior condition, a sequence effect. 3-phase design that begins with a treatment condition is a BAB design. The type of sequence of conditions in a study to draw conclusions is an experimental design. A pattern of responding without a variation, steady state responding. Experimental control technique that uses NCR as control, non-contingent reinforcement reversal technique. A change in the function of a stimulus due to verbal stimulus which modifies how individuals respond to the stimulus in the future. Verbal function altering behavior. Relationship between the stimulus and the response where all parts match. Point-to-point conversion. Correspondence. Point-to-point correspondence. Demonstration that prior baseline trends would remain if not for the independent variable. Verification. Experimental design with baseline intervention, ABAB design. A faulty explanation of behavior that assumes an inner cause, mentalism. Repeating conditions to determine reliability, replication. 5 different types of verbal behavior, elementary verbal operant. Direct observation of antecedent behaviors, consequences in the natural environment. Descriptive functional behavior assessment. Recording a descriptive temporally sequence account of behaviors, antecedents, and consequences. Anecdotal observation. Behavior change that has maximum impact on accessory reinforcers is elicitation. A single component evokes a non-matching intraverbal response. Simple verbal discrimination. Behavior whose reinforcement is mediated by a listener. Verbal behavior. Experiments to determine the effects of different amounts of independent variables. Parametric analysis. A change in behavior is attributed to only the manipulated event. Functional relation. Twin and locking levels of verbal behavior in one utterance. Autoclitic. Experimental arrangements of antecedent consequences of functional analysis. Recording the extent to which a behavior occurs more often as sometimes than others. Scattered plot recording. Verbal behavior where the listener is affected by a specific response topography from the speaker. Topography base. A behavior that exposes a learner to new environments is a behavioral cusp. Likelihood that a target behavior will occur in each circumstance is conditional probability. A response evoked by a written verbal SD with no formal similarity, but there is point-to-point correspondence. Textual. Attack that occurs as a result of stimulus generalization. Attack extension. Demonstration of a functional relation between environmental variables and behavior. Functional analysis. Repeating conditions in an experiment to determine effects. Replication. Experimental design with baseline intervention baseline. ABA design. A single antecedent variable affects the strength of more than one response. Divergent multiple control. Interaction between a speaker and a listener is a verbal episode. Exchanging the reinforcement contingencies for 2 different responses is contingency reversal. Objective observational phenomena is empiricism. Higher order verbal cusp. Combining speaker and listener repertoires is bidirectional naming. Each session of the FA is terminated when problem behaviors occur. Latency-based functional analysis. Variation where baseline and or intervention starts and other legs are staggered. Delayed multiple baseline probe. Only behavior likely to produce naturally occurring reinforcement should be targeted. Relevance behavior rule. Multiple treatment reversal design is using reversal logic to compare the 2 effects of more condition. The observation affecting the behavior being measured is reactivity. Natural science approach to the study of behavior. Experimental analysis of behavior. A philosophical approach that views behavioral events that cannot be observed as outside the realm of science. Methodological behaviorism. Data that is not trending upward or downward is stable baseline. Controlled comparison of the DB and the IB as an experiment. Person who reinforces the speaker behavior is a listener. A duplicate where the form of a motor response is under the control of a visual verbal SD with formal similarity. Motor imitation. Behaviorism that understands a human behavior including private events. Radical behaviorism. Response evoked by a verbal SD with no point-to-point correspondence is intraverbal. Someone who engages in verbal behavior is a speaker. The prior level of responding cannot be reproduced as irreversibility. A systematic approach to understanding of natural science is phenomenal science. Multiple baseline designs apply to different locations with multiple baselines across settings. Ruling out simple explanations before moving to complex explanations is parsimony. Repeatedly implementing a condition to reduce extraneous variables is steady-state strategy. The degree to which a study's findings have generality is external validity. Antecedent and response share the same sense mode and resemble each other. Formal similarity. Interact procedures that identify and define the target behavior is behavioral assessment, serving the same purpose as function equivalent. Interview rating scales or questionnaires used to identify the maintaining reinforcer of problem behavior is interact functional assessment. Assessments that acknowledge complex interrelations between environment and behavior are ecological assessments. A spoken verbal stimulus that evokes a written typed or finger spelled response is taking dictation. The extent to which only change is in the behavior is because of the